How's it going, everybody? My name is Mike Curnow. I'm going to be talking about ITOT Security Convergence. Can everybody hear me? Yeah? Awesome. Okay, thank you. It's funny, Mitch Hedberg used to have a joke about how these passes always let him know if he was upside down. I was thinking of that as I was walking up here. Anywho's, is this a quick synopsis about myself? Name is Mike Curnow. Personal time I spend either at the gym doing a number of open source software development, mainly on things like GitHub or GitLab or Bitbucket. Play a ton of video games. Pretty avid football fan. I kind of feel like I'm going to lose half of you if I tell you what team, but I'm going to do so anyways. Yeah, don't hold it against me. I'm here for you guys. So professional life is, I'm a cybersecurity instructor at the Coder School, teaching kids tenets of cybersecurity. I worked there for almost 2.5 years, teaching strictly PHP, Python, and like web-based technologies. Here's a picture of me doing what I just told you I was doing. It's the Chief Information Officer of a financial analysis startup. This is probably the most professional you'll ever see me, and it's caught on camera. I'm the lead security operations center architect at Block Harbor, which is a cybersecurity firm based out of Detroit, Michigan. And we have a heavy concentration in the cyber to physical realm. So that's your automotive, your IoT, and your industrial control system operation technology. But we do software as well, software and hardware testing. And I'm also the former head of cybersecurity at SAM Analytics. And I was also a former psychological operations specialist at USASOC. That's me. Same person, just no scarf. Why is he speaking to me? Like, what gives me the right to stand up here and try and speak from my experience? So I'll kind of go over that really quick. I've spent a vast amount of time in offensive security testing, right? So red teaming, as we call it in the biz. So application penetration testing, really just anything. It could be hardware, it can be software, it can be OT devices, it can be IoT devices, anything that utilizes a multitude of communication protocols, MQTT, DNP3, Modbus, whatever the devices we can. Where I've had a lot of experience doing that. Then vulnerability assessments, assessing vulnerabilities and the security of network, of an architecture, doing on-site threat modeling, that kind of stuff. And social engineering campaigns, right? So like I'm the guy that makes the campaigns that you click on and they phish you and they get your password and they propagate that throughout your email domain. And so I'm one of those guys. A lot of defensive security, so security analysis. Sitting in a security operations center, looking at events coming in, creating event streams, creating a story of events that happens, right? So basically playing detective with events of all kinds. I've also created a security incident event manager, implemented that, and I'm mainly an architect at this point. And industrial control systems. And this is why we're all here, right? And so in ICS, I say ICS, we all say SCADA, right? SCADA means ICS. Really, ICS and SCADA is a nice way of saying not IT. So I did a vulnerability test on a piece of a major city transportation infrastructure. That was kind of my big end to this. And once I got about chest deep, I fell just in love with the idea of doing testing on SCADA systems. And I spent a lot of my free time doing extensive IT and OT research, mainly looking at devices that are in the wild, right? So people trying to adhere to this convergence, but employing it improperly. That's a lot of what I'm going to be talking about here today. So what I won't talk about, I'm going to try and stay away from product-centric promotions here. The minute granulars of NERC substandards, SIP 002-5, SIP 003-7. I'm kidding, you can read that. And getting into the 80,000 ISC standards. The reason I put this on here, it's half joke, but at the same time, this is kind of what I would consider compulsory items to be taken care of at this point. If you're going to be engaging in trying to bridge that air gap, and implementing any semblance of ITOT convergence, these items should be taken care of by your administrative, whoever's architecting that network that your SCADA runs on. So what am I going to talk about is the security problem in ITOT convergence, how to think securely while bridging the air gap, and some perspective ways to go ahead and secure your architectures while trying to implement this air gap bridging. So the goals for the audience, really, one of my big goals here is I want you to have some kind of takeaway, right? Like no matter how minute or how grand, I want you to have something that you can take away from this and implement in your own environment or inject into your own team meetings, right? Anything that you can. Then more importantly, I want to build a mindset, right? So I want to kind of shave away some of the cognitive dissonance that might exist here, trying to get into planting a seed of growth for that secure mindset, cultivate it, let it grow. And then try, for the next 30 minutes, we'll kind of break away from secure this product, secure that product, dropping a product in to secure things. Sometimes that's something that people kind of fall victim to, which isn't bad, because vendors aren't there to hurt us. Our success is their success, but we want to think outside of different products, right? So we want to think of the comprehensive, the whole all-encompassing picture here. So really quickly, I was going to start things off with a joke here, but basically Mitch Hedberg has this really quick joke I think actually kind of suits what I'm going to talk about soon. Pretty much it just goes, there's no sound, so you have to watch it really quick. Basically, stayed up, saw a commercial for slip covers. They said, forget everything you know, and he did. Just load off his mind. Then he tried to sell it to him. He had no idea what they were. So I kind of want to just kind of ease us into that mindset of we'll try and keep a bit of an open mind for the next 33 minutes or so. All right. So one thing that I like to discuss is the shiny engine, right? The one thing that's the cure-all, be-all, fix-all solution. You do this, this result's going to happen, right? Or this is going to clean up your entire network. We see this a lot with a lot of firewall devices too. I'm not going to name names or anything, but the idea, again, breaking away from a secure offering product-specific mindset just for a little bit, because no matter how secure, how shiny the engine is, right? Like, I don't even know what these things are here. There's like a clock. You maybe check your email on that. I don't know. The idea is that no matter how secure a product or how cool a product you drop in, if your car looks like this, it's not going to matter, right? So I kind of want to make sure that nobody has this car here. Nobody wants a lemon, right? You want to get your money back. So really, real briefly here, I just kind of want to cover the ITOT convergence and how integrating this IT with OT so we can increase our feasibility of process and event monitoring, right? Send that up to a cloud analytics platform because we need to end up meeting these needs here to employ a proper convergence. So there are a lot of benefits here. Just going to kind of populate all these real quick. So we have an increased sensing visibility. That's a given. Increased control over distributed operations. You might have a scenario where your cloud infrastructure, your cloud platform that you're going to, you might be able to send commands back. I'm not sure how many people employ that, but I do know that is a thing. More responsive and organizational. Better decisions made based off of intelligence that you get from sensing and visibility, which is big things. It creates a feedback loop. If information happens, you observe it, that helps better processes in the long run, right? And then improve customer satisfaction and improve stakeholder satisfaction. So those are kind of the high level benefits here. And so some of the challenges that we face, which is some of this is what Sam hit upon a little bit, or the next couple things here. So the compatibility, right? So IT, anytime that innovation is engineered, it's built with the expectance of having 100% compatibility rate, but at the same time, there are safeguards and there is flexibility built in for the those kind of par for the course scenarios where something might not go as planned, right? So like an unexpected buffer overflow or something like that. And then OT is a bit more, stringent and ironclad, rigid. It's expecting a very exact thing, and if you don't give it exactly what it wants, it might throw a fit, or it might do something adverse to your system, which is not good. I use the term system loosely, context-based. And then skills, right? There's a pretty big skills gap, especially from what I've seen and from my own research. So the high reliability and uptime breeds this kind of culture where what was prevalent maybe 10, 15, 20 years ago is still in use today. And so you have a lot of people that have been working on these protocols and on this technology for a long time. That makes it kind of hard for folks to get in, but at the same time, though, because those are older, it's not always as appealing. As I say older only because OT's innovation cycles or improvement cycles normally aren't like every few months like software, right? And for good reason. You can't have these systems just shutting down on a dime. And every update can create some kind of adverse effect on the system. So you want to make sure that when you update or integrate anything in an OT network, it is mature. It's at a mature stage where all the bugs have been fixed, and you're putting something quality in your system, not just being part of the crowdsourced testing. And there's culture. So I have the red line here, which shows information technology, and then I forgot I had a laser pointer. Operational technology is a blue line. So we use the term convergence a lot. So the thing is, to my knowledge at least, there was never really a point of divergence. It was just parallel information technology, OT technology, and then there are points where you might have to talk to each other, right? So, but here we're talking about a bit more of a full-blown convergence or collaboration, or some people say integration. So the culture of IT, uptime is 99.9%. Again, innovations and updates are done in a way that you expect 100%, but at the same time, there are things in place where, hey, something goes down, it's okay, system restores, auto restarts, whatever. And then speed and flexibility. I forgot to put scalability in there too, depending on what you're doing. And then OT, uptime 100%, monolithic and rigid. I don't mean that as an insult. It has to be. It has to be monolithic and rigid, right? Because if there's a system crash, real world things happen. That can be loss of property, loss of life. Loss of life, more importantly, I should have put that first. So then we get into bridging the air gap. And so the air gap, it's, as Sam said, it's that physical gap of segmenting or taking things on and off the network so that at certain times curated information or data can come in or out. And so the concept is that if you do this at controlled intervals, you can stop the spread or injection of malware, which is smart, and it has its utility. And so here, I'm going to be using this emblem right here prolifically throughout the rest of the presentation. So I want you to know that this is how I'm representing a SCADA system, right? Or sorry, a SCADA server. So this is a SCADA software built into, let's say, a Windows OS or a CentOS or whatever OS you can think of. So that's what I'm going to be using that for, and it's just a funny illustration of an actual bridge. So the goal here is, the goal that we're trying to do is take our nicely, done up OT networks, and we want to end up playing nice with IT networks, right? So we want to kind of have as much of a sync as we can, because we're going to have to play by some of the IT rules if we're going to be converging with IT. So the expectation, which I think a lot of people have, is that we're just going to have this kind of sync, which these guys are actually oddly in sync, so I figured I'd use that. But from the research that I've done, and a lot of the things that I've actually seen in the wild, by in the wild I mean just on the internet, is actually more like this. That's the an organization goes, hey, there's a solution where I can just hook up my SCADA PLC device up to the internet willy-nilly. There we go. The ball, that's the security. The ball's been dropped. The man dropped the ball here. And then I've got a couple other gifts here. There's a B-12 bomber, and there's some fire here. There's a guy tripping in a store aisle. And that's just me kind of half being funny, half trying to drive a point home, because it gets bad, and I'm going to show you. So here's some interesting statistics that Block Harbor had published for the industry forecast for industrial control systems. So first up, we were able to find 23,000 PLC devices that were using the Modbus communication protocol. It's the most easy to get your hands on. It's pretty popular. Lots of brands have them. There was about 16,000 that were found that were utilizing Siemens protocols, meaning that people got these nice devices out of the box. They put them up to the internet, no training. That's it, right? And then there's 500 using the DNP3 protocol. Now, these figures here are more to kind of not to place too much emphasis on the individual protocols that are used, because you can have, if most of you guys are using something like that use DNP3, and I'm sitting here talking about Modbus, it's the same guy, different T-shirt, right? The idea is that the devices are connected on the internet openly, and you can interact with them. It's scary. So who's affected by this? Who's affected in a breach? Water treatment facilities, power plants, the user, infrastructure, satellites. And so a couple services that can be offered are penetration testing, security operations center, things like architecture review, just to kind of take a look. Oh, okay, so here's the fun part. You guys are going to like this. So this is when I get into my PLC Lab. And so what I have here is I have a virtual PLC set up utilizing the Modbus protocol, port 502. Again, it's the most prolifically used communication protocol in PLCs. And so what I'm going to go ahead and do here is I created a tool during a SCADA pen test, actually. Created a tool that would help me read the, after I figured out that a certain function was available on the PLC, I was able to then also enumerate all the holding register address values. I was able to list them all out, right? And so on this side, you'll see I have, oops, hold on a second here. Oh, it helps if I actually run it. It's kind of a big deal. There we go. All right, so I just started the virtual PLC lab, and we can see here, currently we're listing 1 through 37. I just picked an arbitrary number that would kind of fit the window here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and activate a tool that I call Rapid Fire. And so Rapid Fire, it looks kind of weird. There it is. So Rapid Fire is it's a tool that I developed to aid in pen testing for PLCs. This will eventually be open source. I'm just working on a couple of bugs here. So what we're going to do really quick is before we even hop on that, I want to go ahead. We're going to take a quick little trip on Shodan just so I can kind of validate a couple of the numbers that I showed you. This is something you can just do on your own. Go to shodan.io. Make sure that none of your own devices are exposed in this manner. Shodan is it's a scanner that actually got it's a scanning search engine that got its start as a way to look up just open webcams on the internet. However, the functionality has been extended over the past few years to actually cover really anything that's on the internet. So we have Modbus, Siemens, DNP, BACnet. We have like a whole cornucopia of different communication protocols utilized in industrial control system infrastructure. So we take a look here. We can just click on Modbus. Not going to sit here for too long. I just kind of want to show you guys this. Come Because what you can do is you will be able to find PLC, like this right here, 90.236.133.202, from Sundsvall, Sweden. So this right here, I can see that the response back was not a legal function error, meaning that more than likely I should be able to actually talk to on port 502. Again, this is just people setting these up and not reconfiguring.
So nobody sitting in this room is going to get in trouble for
No.
this, right?
No, this is, I'm not actually going to, so the lab is me pretending to be a hacker and clicking on one of these. Yeah, so no, we're good. So now I'm the hacker and I've clicked into one of these. I got the IP address, I've got that 90.236, whatever it was, in that minute, and I was able to print out the holding register. So that's kind of the scenario that we're in right now. I'm going to go ahead. Choice 1 for Modbus. I'm going to go to choice 4. I'm going to run this Modbus pen test framework really quick and use. I'm going to put the microphone down as I do this. Hold on. All right, so what I'm going to do really quick is now that I'm plugged into this Modbus device, I'm going to go ahead and hold on. That's good. Yeah, having mic issues. All right, so pretty much what I'm going to do is now that I have enumerated tables, the actual data here. On the right side, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and check and see what functions this PLC has available. Whoops. And so I'm going to use that. I'm going to set my target to the IP address, which is on here. So now we have that plugged in. We're going to set, there's a whole other process for getting the actual UID, but I'm going to set it to 1 because I know for a fact that this lab is set to use 1. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to exploit. And so it starts enumerating. What it does is it starts enumerating the different functions that the PLC device that's actually seen uses. And so we can see, so a couple interesting ones here that we're going to be using for the sake of this exercise. Read multiple holding registers and write multiple holding registers, right? So function 3 and 16 here. So we're going to go ahead and stop that really quick. Like I said, there's a couple bugs in it, so bear with me here. But what I'm going to do now is I'm going to actually, now that I know that those two are available, I'm going to go ahead and execute something that I call holding register address value injection. So whenever you have the ability to actually interact with the PLC in the wild that's hooked up, if I'm a real mean guy, I can just go ahead and reset all the holding register address tables. And so I'm going to show you that just a second. So you want to the Modbus socket that I use can only run 125 of these requests at a time, which is unfortunate. But for the sake of this exercise, I'll just do 1 through 40. And so now look on the right side. Actually, I'm gonna do something really quick. I'm gonna restart this. This is just a watch window here that I'm running a command to actually look at the holding register addresses. So it's gonna refresh every half second. So hopefully you can see the changes here. All right, so I'm gonna set those. I'm gonna do 777, right? So once I run it, you just keep your eye on the right side of the screen, right? So that's all your PLC configurations gone. Yeah, so that's it for that. So don't put your PLCs on the internet. Someone's going to do this. Not me, but somebody will do this. All right, so next, so how do we securely bridge the air gap? This can be a bit of a contentious subject, because if I were to say everything that I'm saying is exactly how you secure, everything that I say is exactly how you secure the air gap, I got to leave some room, right? So basically, a lot of what I'm going to be showing you from here on out is going to be, there's going to be a couple of insecure models. We're going to get into threat modeling, and we're also going to get into some special ways that I came up with, which might be implemented a little bit different for you guys if you want to roll some of these ideas. So how do we securely bridge the air gap? So let's get into some fundamentals. Number one, part of building the mindset, cybersecurity rule number one, you're not secure, right? You're just a guy poking holes in a water bottle, that felt right to use. And here's this man hacking everything in Best Buy. It's only this easy when you put your PLCs on the internet. All right, so the reason that we want to keep this mindset forever, right? Because if we keep the mindset that we're never secure, that kind of motivates us to do everything we can to be secure, correct? We want to explore all the avenues possible, do every single thing we can. Bridging the air gap is no different. You got to think of all the ways that things can go wrong. That's part of the threat modeling that we're going to get into. Okay, so before we get into the actual models, I just kind of want to quickly go through the sliding scale of cybersecurity. When in an industrial control system or an OT network, SCADA network, whatever nomenclature you want to use to mean the actual SCADA network itself, this is also taught at SANS for the ICS security too. Starting off at securing the architecture, and then set up your passive defense, then set up your active defense, then set up intelligence, and so on. Again, sometimes people get into the mindset that we get a product to do this, but this is really, really bad. So don't do that. So how do we securely bridge the air gap? Again, fundamentals. At this point, we want to make sure that you're employing proper encryption in your SCADA network setup. So honestly, your SCADA software, whatever vendors you're using, that should be covering it. And then AAA authentication, authorization, auditing. Again, this is an internal process that you want to keep to make sure your access controls and whatnot are secure. Auditing is a big one. It goes into routine vulnerability checks. Slow-moving changes, again, we want to make sure that our 100% uptime is always 100% up, right? That means that changes in infrastructure are kind of few and far between. And but don't let that damper the fact that you want to do continual security checks, right? So do vulnerability checks. I mean, once every 3 months at least, right? Like once every quarter is what I'd say at least. But if you do it more than that, awesome. If I had my way, everyone would be doing it once a week. So, anyways, continued. How do we do this? Secure network architecture, right? Throughout Seinfeld, George has ubiquitously claimed to be an architect. He's not. But we're going to go to some actual architecture here. I'm going to be using this a couple of slides here. Again, SCADA server that's set up on like a Windows device or something. This is the cloud analytics platform, right? So whatever you're sending your data to. And the prospective model for the SCADA network is going to be the SCADA network that's got a host of PLCs under it. And this is just for simplicity's sake. So you can have one, you can have 100, a million, I don't really care. But the idea is that we all just kind of have the idea of what a basic SCADA network can look like for the purpose of continuing forward. So I want to get into threat modeling while doing architecture. So what are we building? Architecture, we just saw that. What can go wrong? Again, always assume a lot. not secure, right? Remember rule number 1, you're never secure. Keep that in mind. So incoming communications of any kind can compromise the system. Here we have a miniature threat model where we see that this blue line right here represents a barrier of trust, meaning that your outgoing information that you send to your cloud analytics center, once it goes over that barrier, it's no longer trusted. Therefore, it's safe to assume that whatever comes over that trust barrier cannot be trusted, which is the idea behind air gap. So what are we going to do about it? Protect SCADA Network from unsolicited incoming traffic, right? So that can be detrimental to any of the devices that are being touched by these requests. So don't do just this. Don't plug it into the internet and just plug it right up, because I'm gonna, or not me, someone's gonna do what I did in that exercise. But instead, we have a trust barrier right here. We're gonna be expanding the network a bit, right? There's expanding the topology a bit. And we're gonna expand the topology more, and we're gonna expand it more. And so this part gets a little bit heavyweight, so I just need to make sure everyone's looking at this here. So what we have here, here's a perspective fix right here. We see the addition of a unidirectional gateway, which is unidirectional gateways are gateways built with normally only just an outgoing fiber optic connection, and the incoming is empty, so you can't actually receive anything back. Now I've done a lot of research on this. This is a product that only one company makes that I know of, and it's pretty expensive. So I'm going to be showing you this, but I'm going to be showing you ways without this as well. That's one way, right? So we make sure that everything follows this nice path up. Should be secure, right? So next step in threat modeling is, do we do a good enough job? And that's where you always want to test. So for this example, we have somebody on the outside trying to send numerous types of input and requests into trying to hit this, but we see that because this module misses it's a one-way diode, and the incoming is actually missing that fiber optic piece that would take the incoming traffic. So we test it, we make sure, hey, this works. And so again, we're gonna explore ways that don't use this, because this, I'll tell you this before I carry on. I've done a lot of research on unidirectional gateways. And there are instances where you can actually take your high to low or low to high diodes. You can actually combine them to create a dual traffic, incoming and outgoing, because it's a feature of these systems, and there are interfaces that allow you to interact with these unidirectional gateways. So it's not a static piece like I originally had thought it was. So what we're going to do here is I'm going to go over some topologies that actually cover going into securing without using the gateways. And so this is actually a high-level one right here, where you have IT network. We have IT network, and that's separate from the segmented OT network. And your SCADA device is sending information to a relay server, which then utilizes a trunked VPN one-way connection to a receiving relay server, and then that sends out to your cloud platform. That's one way of going about it, but we get a little bit. We'll get a little bit deeper into this. Again, just a couple of higher level ones. Same thing as the last slide. But what we have here is an independent segmented network just for the relay server, because you might not want to have this on the IT server, right, or the IT network itself, because you're not sure what all these things would do to this. So the idea behind these is I set a trunked VPN communication. So we can see there's an illustration of a tunnel with the VPN server traffic going one way. You can configure the VPN server to go one way. You can configure the router to only let the trunked traffic go one way. And at the actual OS level, you can make it so that only the two devices talk. So you have the security, that kind of like security, not in depth, but the layers, right? You have three things saying that you can't go out. Okay, so this is my pride and joy right here. So I'm going to try and wrap this up, next couple slides up quickly here. But this, again, green arrow is the information coming in through here. So we have the relay server 1 with the VPN server outgoing here. Then we have this going to a reverse proxy, which goes out. That way, if this is connected to the internet and somebody tries to hit this, they're going to end up hitting the reverse proxy, which will reroute to a honeypot. Again, this is perfect world scenario. If you give me tools, this is what I'm personally, as Mike Renault, going to make. You redirect to a honeypot. You also see here on the IT network, you have a network intrusion detection system server. And this pink port right here is actually a tap or spam port, which is mirroring all the traffic into here. So you get intelligence of what people are trying to do with this device. Again, traffic coming in will be an impossibility at this point unless somebody goes in there and messes all the configurations up. But you're not only protecting this, but you're creating your own ability to have that information feedback loop where you feed it. This information that you get goes back into your SCADA system to help you build, rebuild, implement smarter. So what I'm going to get into here is a scenario in which company A has a SCADA infrastructure that they have set up. And so they set up this infrastructure like so. They have, I just put one just that it would fit. One PLC system, so it would fit in the SCADA network. And then you have that going to a unidirectional gateway, hitting the network router, then that comes up, right? And then let's say the attack vector, oh, sorry, really quick, yeah, this is the SCADA traffic that the SCADA device itself can actually monitor. It logs and all that. There's no visibility at the choke points. There's no visibility at the unidirectional gateway traffic, and there's no visibility between this and the actual gateway router itself, which is kind of what we want to, this is actually a switch, which will go to the gateway, but we want to rectify that, right? So let's say that the attack vector for this scenario is going to be a employee, right? This is an employee who's asked for a raise, I don't know, 80 times in the past year, and nothing's happened. He's now disenfranchised. He feels alienated. He's pretty pissed off, right? So we get this employee. Now he becomes criminal, right? So with our attack vector being employee, he's able to have access to the SCADA devices right here. Plugs into USB. USB contains malware that does something to that SCADA system, and that SCADA system now sends out an outgoing request to a command and control server. This command and control server is able to, again, remember, we have the ability to change the type of diode that we have with unidirectional gateways, whether they're one-way or not. And so for the sake of this, we can say the malware actually utilized some kind of API or some kind of communication with this to change the configuration of how that traffic comes in and out, and is able to send a request back with crypto miner, right? So now you have this high-powered SCADA device, which is now making money for our criminal here, right? And he goes home and he is able to reap the benefits of what's on the CNC server. And all these, a lot of what I'm showing you here is basically. There are like tons of scenarios where you can say, oh, okay, well, that might not happen, or that might not happen, and then there's situations where it can. So, our points that we lack visibility right here, what we want to do is we want to monitor everything, right? So monitoring, again, continuing what Sam said, monitoring is key. And then here's some kind of cliche gifs from the movie Hackers to kind of show monitoring, right? Metrics and charts and graphs and lines and all that. So recap, view your SCADA security from an objective standpoint. Look at everything at once. Take a step back. Look at all that you have. Don't hastily connect your OT device to the internet. People are going to do that kind of stuff that I showed you. Place heavy emphasis on the hardening of infrastructure. Use creative architecture, right? So if you don't have it in budget to get 80 different unidirectional gateways, make sure that you have creative network architects that can create this kind of infrastructure for you. Monitor, just do it. Yeah, that's really it. That's the end. I have 1 minute for questions. It's probably not going to happen. within a minute. So if anybody wants to pull me aside and ask me something, I'd be more than happy to. I can talk about this for hours. So if anybody would want to, that's awesome. I'm gonna.
Thanks, Mike.
Go ahead. Yeah. No problem.